Good evening, everybody. President Trump today delivered not only the best speech of his presidency, but arguably the best speech ever delivered to the UN General Assembly by a president. President Trump forcefully asserting his America First doctrine, while demanding far more of the United Nations and its member states in support of the institution financially and otherwise. The president also confronted rogue nations, North Korea and Iran.
The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. The Iranian government masks a corrupt dictatorship behind the false guise of a democracy. It has turned a wealthy country with a rich history and culture into an economically depleted rogue state whose chief exports are violence, bloodshed, and chaos.
And unlike his two predecessors, President Trump, well, he confronted radical Islamist terrorists by name today.
We will stop radical Islamic terrorism because we cannot allow it to tear up our nation and indeed to tear up the entire world. We must deny the terrorists safe haven, transit, funding, and any form of support for their vile and sinister ideology.
The reaction of the mostly left-wing General Assembly was mostly overwhelmingly positive. For his part, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was absolutely effusive. He said in a statement, quote, "In over 30 years in my experience with the UN, I have never heard a bolder or more courageous speech," end quote. But the strongest negatives originating with the Dems on Capitol Hill. Senator Dianne Feinstein, who last month said Mr. Trump could be a good president if he changed, today signals she is hardly concerned at all that North Korea has fired 2 ballistic missiles over our ally, Japan. The Democrat said this in a statement, quote, "The goals of the United Nations are to foster peace and promote global cooperation. Today, the president used it as a stage to threaten war. He aims to unify the world through tactics of intimidation, but in reality, he only further isolates the United States." And crying Chuck Schumer was, as expected, not pleased that Kim Jong-un might not be pleased himself, and Schumer could hardly have been more petty in his critique.
If I were giving the president advice, I would have said avoid using Rocket Man. We know the leader of North Korea is erratic, to put it kindly. That kind of language, I think, is risky.
Kindly, he said. Kindly. Well, for more on the president's speech, the Dem reaction, and his take on the day is Ed Rollins, serving in 3 presidential administrations, the chief political advisor of the House Republican leadership, the Dean, Ed Rollins. Ed, good to have you here. The president gave a tremendous speech, strong, it seemed to me, in every quarter.
It was extremely strong. He had great presentation. It was clear. There was great clarity to the speech. And you know, and you think back over the last 8 years when President Obama, who basically had the policy of leading from behind, there was no mistake to those leaders that were there. And first he said, I'm going to take care of my country, you take care of your country, but my country basically takes care of all of you in a way. And we're not going to put up with this tin horn dealer in North Korea who's threatened us, threatened our allies in Japan, and we're just not going to put up with it. And it's not an idle threat. Make it clear, it's not an idle threat. And I think that was very, very positive.
I'm sorry.
Then I think saying to the Iranians, who basically are certainly, I agree, and you've agreed on this show, we've done this many times, what a terrible deal that Iranian deal was. And I think to a certain extent, he said to them today, we're going to redo it. We're going to make sure it's in our best interest and the world's best interest. Now
he's the president making it clear you will hear a lot more about his views on that deal. We also heard this president say that he was disappointed with the performance of just about everyone in the room at the United Nations. He talked about the potential. It was an offering of an olive branch, if you will, to those who would stand up and really contribute to the goals of the UN and actually share properly and equitably the expense of running the institution.
Well, we've paid an overwhelming share of that institution since the beginning. Our city is terribly inconvenienced by when they come here. I think at the end of the day, we feel it's important, but we think it's important that they behave and they march forward. And I think he showed a very strong leadership today, and I think there's not a person in that room who basically wouldn't say, my goodness, Americans aren't weak anymore. This is a very strong leader. Yeah, may not like him, but he's a very strong leader.
Yeah, and by the way, I think they do like him, and I do think they respect him. And I do think the only people who are worrying about whether he is respected or liked by them is the vast left-wing nut national media. That seems to originate with him. Let's turn to the politics of the day. Obamacare, the repeal is back on. What is going on with the Republican Party?
Well, I think they're working behind the scenes. I think they don't quite have the votes yet, but they're working hard to make it a factor. And you just think if the president makes this speech this week, all the other stuff he's had, they've got a tax plan coming forward in a week or two, and if he gets the repeal of the Obamacare next week, which is the deadline, then basically he's right back on track on everything he needs. And even if they don't get right on track, he has not given up the fight. And I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is he has grown in the 8 or 9 months here to where he is not just a leader here in this country. He's now becoming a very significant force in the world.
What you're saying is very important, because I think most people, this man has been so strong as president.
Right.
Bedeviled and beleaguered from 360 degrees by media, the opposition party, his own party establishment. He is, I think at this point, more accepted and possibly the strongest individual to serve in the Oval Office in my lifetime, and I'm including Ronald Reagan. He's established himself as the leader of this nation.
Which is very important. I mean, Reagan came in with a little different environment,
right,
with a little different experience. But I think from where he started and the cynicism that was out there, and still the cynicism among the Democrats, I mean, for Schumer to stay there, my good friend last week to this week, to make a very deliberate decision to call him Rocket Man, to sort of belittle this leader of North Korea who does not listen, who has basically blackmailed America in the last 2 presidencies. And I think to a certain extent, there's no more blackmailing.
Schumer looked like an abject fool, let's be honest. I mean, he's talking about, to put it kindly, he's eccentric. I mean, what kind of mindless nonsense is that?
I hope when the president watches those responses tonight, he understands this guy's not his ally. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether he's the enemy or not. Trump's going to do his thing and move forward.
Could I suggest one thing on this? And I take your point. On the importance of moving legislation, and whether it be the repeal of Obamacare, tax reform, and certainly the president wants all of that and more. But I believe this president is so strong at this point and has demonstrated clearly what he wants done and is leading the Republican Party toward those objectives. But if this legislature, led by Paul Ryan in the House and Mitch McConnell in the Senate, fail to deliver again on his agenda, I believe he stands strong as president, and they fall as weak leaders of their party on Capitol Hill.
Well, I think there's no question about that. He is the leader of this party. He was elected to be leader of this party, and he's developed day by day greater strengths. And I think at the end of the day, he's going to get his legislative agenda, or get most of it. And I think there's no challenger to him at this point in time.
Ed Rollins, as always, great to see you, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're coming right back. There's a lot more ahead. Stay with us. The General Assembly didn't know what to expect from President Trump. What they got was an extraordinary speech.
Now North Korea's reckless pursuit of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles threatens the entire world with unthinkable loss of human life.
We take up the latest threats from rogue regimes with a senior counselor for the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. My guest next, John Hannity. And catastrophic Hurricane Maria, battering Dominica now on its path to Puerto Rico. We'll have the full report on what has become a deadly and powerful storm. That and much more straight ahead. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
On the next Hannity, President Trump addresses the United Nations General Assembly. Will his message get through to other world leaders? I'll see you at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 in the West.
A large earthquake today hitting Mexico. At least 104 people killed. The death toll is expected to rise and to rise significantly. The earthquake hit at 2:15 Eastern Time, measuring 7.1. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the epicenter about 75 miles southeast of Mexico City in the state of Puebla. Heavy damage, including collapsed buildings, gas leaks reported across the city, across the region that bore the brunt of the earthquake. Fires resulted in some instances. The government says almost 4 million people lost their power. The international airport in Mexico City remains closed at this hour. The country's stock exchange suspended trading. This devastating quake comes less than 2 weeks after the longest quake, strongest quake in a century hit Mexico's southern coast, an 8.1 magnitude earthquake leaving 90 people dead. Well, turning back to President Trump's powerful address today at the United Nations General Assembly, my next guest says it was essential for the president to put the world on notice about the threats of North Korea and Iran and U.S. foreign policy. Joining me now, former National Security Advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney, Senior Counselor to Foundation for Defense of Democracies, John Hannity. John, good to have you with us.
Thanks,
your assessment of this speech and what I think is a remarkably positive reaction from a General Assembly that doesn't usually even take note of what an American president says in any case.
Yeah, I think this was vintage Trump. This was a president who was explaining precisely what America First looks like at a global level. It is a strong, independent, sovereign nation states working together to defeat common threats like North Korea and Iran and to advance common interests in prosperity, peace, and security. That's the only way you get to a more stable global order, not by surrendering or submerging your sovereignty in some kind of one world globalized bureaucracy that's dominated by a bunch of corrupt, failed dictatorships. I think that the president delivered that message in a very blunt and powerful way. And my guess is that the likes of Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher would be absolutely beaming if they heard that speech today.
You know, John, I honestly thought this was better than any speech I've ever heard by a president at the General Assembly. It was stronger, it was broader, it was clear and directed, as Ed Rollins says. The clarity was remarkable. But the force with which he delivered it and the assurance with which he delivered that speech, it's obvious that the General Assembly, no friend of the United States in most of those seats in the General Assembly, as you know, they had to take note, and I think this president is standing tall right now on the world stage.
Yeah, the thing that those countries in that audience today, what they need to hear is where the United States stands. What is the United States' position on the major threats to global peace and security today? And coming out of that hall, they have absolutely no lack of clarity on exactly where this president stands on the primary challenges that threaten the United States and the rest of the world.
To follow on your point, John, I would just like everyone to think about it, if you would, for just a moment, how much the vast left-wing national media chewed around in their op-ed pages and in their foreign policy reporting about what is the Obama doctrine. And that discussion was going on to the very last day he served in Washington. This president, 8 months into the job, has defined the doctrine of his foreign policy. The Trump doctrine is clear, it is crisp, it is certain, and there is no ambiguity, or should be no ambiguity, in the minds of anyone in either the General Assembly or Beijing or Moscow or Tehran.
Yeah, I think that's right. On these two critical questions of North Korea and Iran, I really do think the president put everybody on notice that we are done kicking this can down the road, that we are going to deal with this problem one way or the other. We'd much prefer to do it with the rest of the world stepping up and taking responsibility with us. But if they won't, this president is going to deal with this problem alone if necessary. But it's going to get done because this is in the vital interest of America and its allies.
And John, I think you may want to argue with me about about what I'm about to say, but the two previous presidents, in point of fact, have left, three previous presidents have left this president no choice but to have to confront either individually as the leader of the United States or to the degree that our allies will stand up, a North Korea that is nearing ballistic missile capability for delivery of an advanced nuclear weapon. And shame on them. It was a failure of leadership on the part of those three presidents, and it is now up to this president, and to the degree that it is possible, the leaders of those states represented in the General Assembly, and very importantly in the permanent members of the Security Council. Do you agree?
I really wish I could disagree with you, Lou, but I can't. The fact is I can't. This is a history, a litany of failure by one administration after another, both Republican and Democratic, unfortunately. This president has been left with very few options. He is either going to...
I think you just agreed with me, John, because I said it is a question of the failure of three presidents, two of them Democratic and one Republican.
And one who I served with for 8 years, Lou.
I know. That's
and
why
unfortunately, I've got to agree with you, because you're absolutely 100% right that none of them stepped up to the plate and did what was necessary.
John Hannah, good to have you here as always. We always appreciate your insight.
Look
forward to seeing you soon. Thanks so much. Be sure to vote in our poll tonight. The question is, do you believe that Schumer, Pelosi, and other Dems' criticism of President Trump's strong speech at the UN suggests they are worried about hurting the feelings of Kim Jong-un and the Ayatollah? What are they thinking? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. On Wall Street, a record-breaking performance again. The Dow Jones Industrials up 39 points. The S&P gained 3. The Nasdaq up 7, all closing at new all-time highs. Volume on the big board, 3.2 billion shares. And again, the market continues to elevate, as they say. Housing starts, however, falling for a second straight month, led lower by a drop in multifamily home construction, single-family homes moving straight ahead. Walgreens deal to buy Rite Aid, winning regulatory approval after it slashed the number of stores that it would buy. The result, 2 major pharmacy chains in the country as a result of their combination. 2. And T-Mobile in talks for a merger with Sprint, which would cut the number of mobile carriers in this country to 4. These deals leading many to wonder, what happened to the antitrust fervor exhibited during the Trump campaign, and what will be the consequence? A reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. Up next, Puerto Rico is bracing for what may be the most catastrophic hurricane to hit the island in almost a century. You're looking at the storm as it hit the French island of Guadeloupe. We'll have a full report for you on Hurricane Maria. Stay with us. A lot more to take up as the evening continues here on Lou Dobbs Tonight. We're coming right back.
Exceptional reporting every business day. Trust FBN for in-depth insight, breaking headlines, smart investigations, and the latest business buzz. From Wall Street to Washington to the heartland. If it moves the markets, it's already on Fox Business Network.
Tonight, Hurricane Maria is barreling toward Puerto Rico with the potential to be, we are told, the most catastrophic storm to hit the territory since 1928. The Category 5 storm has already obliterated much of the structures on the Caribbean island of Dominica. Winds of 165 miles an hour, at least one person killed on the French island of Guadeloupe. 2 others are reported missing. Fox News meteorologist Adam Klotz is live now in the Weather Center. He has the latest for us on Maria's projected path and strength. Adam.
Hey there, Lou. You know what? This is crazy to think, but just yesterday morning, this was a Category 1, so it's intensified very quickly, and actually, just in the last little bit, winds now up to 175 miles an hour, gusting winds up over 200 miles an hour. You see a nice tight eye wall spinning right there, and what's up next? The U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, just around the corner. Those are the areas that are about to be hit. Now, as it moves as a Category 5, a very strong storm, eventually, and likely not until after it's made landfall with both the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, it will weaken back down to a 4, but that initial landfall is going to be coming overnight to the Virgin Islands, at least really seeing that impact, and then through the day on Puerto Rico tomorrow. So think of your Wednesday, really throughout the day. This system will be moving across that island, really battering the heaviest populated area, that's San Juan, with those very strong winds up into triple digits easily. Now, as this continues to move, you see it kind of shifting and turning off to the right. So well off to the west, that's Florida, that's the Keys. None of those areas that were already hit are going to be hit again, but it is battering some of those same islands, at least the island chains that really saw a lot of Irma's impact. Let's put this in motion for you. And this area right here is where we're looking at the strongest winds. You see it moving right over the heart of Puerto Rico, including San Juan. So it's going to be tough for anyone on that island to escape some of the highest winds. What will the winds climb to? Well, these are some forecasted wind gusts. That is the U.S. Virgin Islands taking you through early tomorrow morning. And then you watch this thing track on over up to 130 miles an hour at times, wind gusts. On top of that, the rain is going to be coming down very heavy, especially right over the island. You're getting these colors here, and that's getting up there to a foot, maybe 18 inches of rain. All of that coming over the course of tomorrow, Lou. This is a really big storm we're tracking. Unfortunately for the folks there in Puerto Rico, it's looking like they're really going to get the brunt of it.
Yeah, and they haven't seen a storm of this magnitude in almost 100 years. Yep. And we'll hope for everyone else, the Bahamas, Florida, and the East Coast, that your path, I'm going to put this on you, Adam, it's your path for this hurricane stays in the direction you've got it. Thanks so much. Adam Klotz. We're coming right back. Much more straight ahead. Please stay with us. This is Rhino Mitch McConnell trying to sell the Republicans' last-ditch effort to repeal Obamacare. This is his idea of an exciting sales pitch.
It is better than the status quo by far, and I think that's an argument we're all comfortable with making.
McConnell may want to work on that sales pitch, but only, of course, if he's actually sincere about ending Obamacare. We take that up with Matt Slapp next. And this daredevil wingsuit pilot, aren't they all, effortlessly completing a stunt that's never been done before by anyone, anywhere. His groundbreaking performance and much more straight ahead. We're coming right back. Stay with us. The Senate Intelligence Committee is behaving badly on so many levels, and it's keeping up its imperious treatment of some of the associates of the president, canceling a hearing for an interview of his longtime attorney, Michael Cohen. Cohen was on the Hill at 9 this morning, ready to deliver on his testimony on the Russia investigation. An hour later, the meeting canceled by the chair, Richard Burr. The senator who cannot do a thing without Mark Warner at his side said Cohen broke an agreement by making public comments on the hearing. Cohen will now appear at an open hearing on October 25th. By the way, the senator from North Carolina, the chairman, is absolutely an outrageous failure in his efforts to lead this committee. It's embarrassing to watch, and it's really bad form and bad manners what they pulled. What do they expect? Michael Cohen to be their piñata? This is outrageous. The president's son, one of his top advisors, will no longer have Secret Service protection. Donald Trump Jr. asked for an end to his details so he could have more privacy. White House counselor Kellyanne Conway, her protection removed after the threat assessment for the counselor to the president was changed. And joining me now to discuss the latest on the Russia witch hunt, the push for health care repeal and replacement, and much more, Matt Slapp, former White House political director under President George W. Bush, now chairman of the American Conservative Union. Matt, good to have you here.
Great to be with you, Lou.
Let's start with the wiretapping. The president has been vindicated on every level on his charge that they were wiretapping him. And you've got James Clapper lying about it. You've got the FBI lying about it, top officials of the FBI in filings, including those of the Department of Justice. This is outrageous, the conduct of the FBI. There needs to be a third special counsel, Matt, and that is to investigate the entire hierarchy of the FBI.
Well, sometimes you wonder why the Republican Party doesn't have the guts to go after the Democrats as aggressively as they love to go after
because
the Republicans.
They're bought and paid for by the Chamber of Commerce and the Business Roundtable, Matt. You know that. And they are as establishment as it gets, and this president is rolling them back.
Well, I hope, but I fear the damage that gets done in the meantime, Lou. And you have a guy like Clapper who went on national TV and said not only was the president not in any way surveilled or his people weren't surveilled, he said specifically there were no FISA-approved wiretaps of Team Trump. He said that very clearly. He said he would know if there were. Yeah. So he put a chill on this story.
By the way, of James Clapper saying that, because it is remarkable, and I asked for it. I'm asking the producers live on the show if we've got it. If you can wait. Okay, we're pulling it up. So
he said that to Chuck Todd, and we all heard it.
Well, he also said it to Congress. He also lied to Congress. Right. He's lied to just about everybody, and the man is, it's just appalling. Listen to this.
There was no such wiretap activity mounted against the president-elect at the time, or as a candidate, or against his campaign.
With respect to the president's tweets about alleged wiretapping directed at him by the prior administration, I have no information that supports those tweets.
We thought we'd give you a Comey bonus because he's lying through his teeth, too. You can call it dissembling, you can call it misrepresenting, playing semantic games. The fact of the matter is, two government officials who have a responsibility of candor and straightforwardness lied to the American people.
And if they don't know, Lou, who knows? I mean, these are the people who were in charge of this. And they say they don't know. It makes you wonder, was this a rogue judge? What was going on here?
No,
it's not believable.
We know
exactly what happened.
They lied. Comey is a liar. Clapper is a liar. And you know what else? Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan are responsible for perpetuating the nonsense from the Senate Intelligence Committees in this Russia witch hunt. And it is just appalling to watch what is going on.
I do think this is a moment, Lou, where Donald Trump has had this uncanny ability to describe these abuses in tweets and in interviews. And even when you don't see the proof at the moment, I have learned to take a step back and to watch. And these things have all been proven to be true. And the fact is this, which is they are attacking the president, trying to delegitimize the president. They're trying to run him out of town on a rail. And I agree with you. There are too many Republicans that think that will be a good thing. It would be a disaster for our party, and it would be a disaster for our country.
You know, the hell with the Republican Party, if I may speak candidly here. Right now, you're talking about a legitimately and duly elected president of the United States who's being subverted by the deep state. This is outrageous. It is an effort by the establishment to attack him. And you know what I really love right now? This president is standing tall, he's leading, and he is right now, as of today, the leader of the free world. He is surrounded by these Lilliputian petty fools of both parties who pretend they are leaders of the Democrats and the Republicans. I mean, what in the world are we doing with a Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House? Are you kidding me? Mitch McConnell, the majority leader of the Senate? These people have never done anything, and between them, they've got a half century on the public dole as either in the Senate or the House.
Well, look, everything's on the line here, Lou. if this health care gambit in the Senate doesn't work, and if a tax bill doesn't happen, I think there's going to be a further revolution in the Republican Party. I think because grassroots conservatives are going to say, why can't you get stuff done?
Matt,
we gave you the majority. You got to get it done.
Matt, I mean, think about this. You've got two leaders, McConnell and Ryan, and the leaders of the respective intelligence committees who are permitting a witch hunt going forward. There's been over a year-long investigation by the FBI of the so-called collusion by the Trump campaign and Russians, and nothing has been produced. You've had almost 5 months by the special counsel. Nothing has been produced. This is ignorance. It is power run amok in an absolute effort to roll back the will of the American people, and it is appalling. And if this hasn't already provoked a rebellion by the Republican Party against its so-called leaders, I think the Republican Party, Matt, is already lost.
Well, I think that the American people are going to be what saves this country. I think the American people are less aligned to party than they ever were, Lou. And I think Donald Trump is a part of that. And I think I trust the American people.
The Republican Party is being led by the Chamber of Commerce and the Business Roundtable and the establishment. And until that is changed and until they start representing the people who elect our congressmen and our senators, we're going to be in very big trouble.
I agree with that. And as a matter of fact, the BRT is bringing all the CEOs from the country to this town soon. And I don't think they're doing anything to try to pass a tax bill because they want to see a tax bill and what it does for them before they'll support it. They need to be interested in what helps the economy and what helps America.
Right.
And that's what we care about.
Matt, as always, great to have you with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lou.
Matt Slapp. And now, roll the video, as they say, a stunt that's never been done before, never seen before. Here it is. This wingsuiter leaping off a cliff in China, soaring at 125 miles an hour. Look at this guy. This is unbelievable. Hitting targets the size of a dinner plate while attached to a moving SUV, pulling him through the air. Amazing. And an extraordinary, extraordinary view. Look at this. Wow. Shoot deployed. And remarkable stunt. Up next, President Trump taking aim at Iran as well during his speech at the United Nations. In that speech, calling President Obama's nuclear deal an embarrassment to the United States. Fred Fleitz of the Center for Security Policy joins me here next. Stay with us. We're coming right back. My next guest says the president's speech today at the United Nations was without question one of the very best ever. Joining me now, former CIA analyst, now Senior Vice President for Policy and Programs at the Center for Security Policy, Fred Fleitz. Fred, good to have you here.
Good to be here.
This president served notice on the world about what is America first, what is the Trump doctrine, and what they can expect from this leader of the free world.
That's exactly right. And I mean, among the many reasons this speech was so well received and was so dramatic, we had a president who didn't go to New York and attack his country and make excuses and apologize for our policies. That's over. That's good. But there's another reason that no one's talking about. And I hate to raise this, but we've been seeing President Trump's policies rolled back by people in the National Security Council and at the State Department. My organization, Center for Security Policy, calls them swamp creatures. And the lead swamp creature is H.R. McMaster, the National Security Advisor. When I heard this speech, I wondered if H.R. McMaster was on vacation and didn't have a chance to clear it because, look, this man is a veteran. He's a hero, but he will not let the president use radical Islamic terrorism. He's been trying to keep the United States in the Iran deal. The president went in another direction today, and I'm very proud of him.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I think we're all very proud of him. And I do think it's over. You know, it is interesting to watch the national media in particular talk about H.R. McMaster or Gary Cohn, his economic advisor, or one of them. You know, these people have influence, no question about it. But this president is, after all, the same man we elected. He may take some time, a week or two. You know, there was I remember what's interesting in what you're saying is implicitly he shouldn't listen. I know you don't mean that, or that he should take more time to decide. This is a man who lives in the moment, and he is leading as no other president in my judgment, in our history has. I mean, it's really remarkable to watch what he's doing. And people may not always understand this, particularly in the political class in Washington. But this president's smarter than hell. And in nearly every instance, he's smarter than the folks who are giving him such amazing grief.
I agree with that. I think the president is listening to all sides. He's weighing his options. But on the Iran deal, he said it is an embarrassment to the United States.
Absolutely.
And in my view, that means he will not just tell Congress.
Can we have a hallelujah?
Well,
hallelujah.
Hallelujah. He's not just going to say, I'm not certifying this to Congress. He will use John Bolton's plan to pull out of this disastrous deal and come up with an alternative that really addresses the threats from Iran and does so with our Middle East allies. You know, Israel and the Gulf states were completely cut out of this idiotic nuclear deal with Iran that Obama came up with. That has to be fixed.
Well, Israel was cut out of just about everything for 8 years under President Obama. They are, as they should be, as our key partner in the Middle East, now in, it seems, every deal. And that is a very positive reversal from so much is from the Obama administration. The other part is, Fred, this is a president who has rolled back so much of the Obama years. First of all, there's almost 3% growth in GDP, folks, in the current quarter. We're talking about nearly 3%. That was an impossibility under President Obama. The Obama administration talked about the new normal. We couldn't do that. He's already doing it, creating more than 1 million jobs. The stock market, $4 trillion in market cap. The positives are extraordinary. But he is harangued and harassed and insulted by the vast left-wing nut media in this country. So it takes so much time now to break through. He should be recognized right now for all of the positives he's brought to the country.
I agree with that. It's tough being president. There's a big agenda to pursue. I think he really made some major strides today in moving towards a foreign policy agenda that I voted for. Yeah. And I'm very proud of him, and I hope he moves forward. Kill the Iran deal as soon as possible. And just, I just think this was just a marvelous moment. As you said earlier, this was a special day at the UN, not only for Americans, but for the rest of the country who got to meet the president up close and personal. Thanks so much, Fred. Good to be here.
Good to see you. Up next, President Trump putting America first on the global stage. Rachel Campos-Duffy, Joe Concha join me to take up the Trump doctrine. That's right, the Trump doctrine, the one we now understand fully. We're coming right back. In our online poll, we ask you, do you support the president's call for 4th of July military parades, not only in Washington, D.C., but all over the country? 90% of you say yes. You know, I love that idea. And it just, the last parade in New York featuring the U.S. military was after the Persian Gulf War in 1991. That's a shame. The president is so right.
And yet on other networks. Oh, you have to introduce us first.
I was going to.
Yeah, sorry.
I thought columnist for the Hill. He interrupts me whenever he's here, but we still invite him.
I was so excited about the topic.
Contributor Rachel Campos-Duffy, she's here because she always agrees with me. Oh yeah, good to have you both here. And you were saying,
I was saying that. All right, so military parades, and the president talked about that with the French president at the UN, and other cable news networks meant that, or at least interpreted it, to say that President Trump wants something that resembles what Kim Jong-un does in North Korea, and kept the context out about Bastille Day and the military parades that go on there.
And President Macron. It's just stunning, since we're speaking about those other networks. Terry Moran, and you've written a column on this.
On the Hill, yeah.
And is it, I'm sorry, the Hill?
The Hill, that's where I work, yeah. It's a DC-based publication. Quite good.
Excellent. And for Terry Moran to say what he said, tell us exactly.
Okay, so ABC News breaks in with a special report to talk about the president's speech today, which you said was the greatest speech ever given by any president at the UN?
Yes.
Okay.
And I stand by it.
That is definitive. You're not ambiguous like you normally are. You actually drove it home. It's sarcasm. Anyway, so then they go to Terry Moran, who's the chief foreign correspondent for ABC. And he says that Trump's rhetoric borders on the threat of committing a war crime.
Listen to that. I mean, listen to that. I mean, this is ignorance.
Because he said that a foreign nation, if they provoke us.
A foreign nation.
Yeah, not just one, a rogue
How about
foreign
North Korea
nation.
that's fired 2 ballistic missiles over our ally, Japan?
Right, exactly. So Trump says we will retaliate if you continue to provocate, and that is a war crime now, apparently, to just say we'll defend ourselves. Rachel.
Well, you mentioned that it's very Reagan-esque. I thought the most Reagan-esque, at least the part that really spoke to me the most.
Are you going to ignore Terry Moran?
I'm going to ignore that because I'll tell you what I loved about the speech. The talk about Venezuela. We have not heard enough, and how unambiguous Trump was about socialism and what that has done to that country. I mean,
can you imagine the horror in the General Assembly? Nearly every government is a socialist government.
Right.
All of our European allies are socialists, and half of the Congress is trying to drive the Congress and the Senate trying to drive this country towards socialism.
And he started the speech speaking about how great our economy is getting under his leadership, which is decisively not socialist. Infant mortality rates, maternal mortality rates have spiked, and Maduro is starving his people. And so I thought it took great moral leadership on the part of Donald Trump to really take time to lay that case out against Nicolas Maduro and call him for what he is, a dictator who is starving his people.
Do you think we'll hear similar language from the Pope as he counsels Maduro?
No, frankly, as a Catholic, I've been very disappointed in the Pope when it comes to the issue of socialism and what it's done to this country.
Let me turn.
He's South American, by the way.
Well, yeah.
Let me turn very quickly to McConnell saying he's going to get repeal. Got about 30 seconds. You get the last word.
Do we think that they're going to get repealed? They're going to get the 50 votes?
Do you?
I'll answer yes. It's going to happen.
She has inside information. Ryan said he'll sign it if the Senate passes it. I don't think you go to the...
What kind of nonsense is that?
You don't go to
We'll play if you play first?
Right.
I mean, come on.
Well, they already passed something. But they would not go to the press. They would not go public with it if they didn't have the votes.
Exactly.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine Ryan doing that. Rachel Campos-Duffy, Joe Concha, thanks.